Today, we are going to be talking about cheap clients and why they're not actually cheap, but what they're actually looking for. Okay, so hear me out. Sometimes, and we've all been here, right? We've all been in that situation where we say our price and then immediately the person is like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. I'm out, right? We've all been there. But value is perceived. And I need you to write that down. Value is perceived. So today we are going to be talking all about why sometimes people don't perceive your values the right way and how we can really shift and change that. So this is going to be in your marketing. This is going to be also just how you build your packages. Okay. So we're going to start with understanding kind of what people are looking for when they come in. So when you're dealing with clients that are, trying to find the best option, not only we've talked about trust before, we talked about how that client is really trying to one, find someone who isn't going to fuck their hair up, right? That's their top priority 99% of the time. But they also want to know that this money that they're spending is actually worth a damn, that they're actually going to get something that they paid for. So, in general, it's really important to let your client know that. And a lot of times we have this really like, as stylists, we don't put ourselves in a analytical mindset. Like we're just more of a creative. So what I find a lot is that we have these offers and these deals, but we don't really pose them in a way that guests can understand the value that's with it. Or maybe you're on the other side where you just actually don't have any value you're offering. So that's something to kind of look at first is what is the offer that I have? What am I trying to sell to this client? And what makes me different than anybody else? Right. So when we create our packages and everything, I call it the first class experience. And I really want my guests to come in and feel like they can just detox and unplug and really just know that they're going to walk out with something beautiful and know that they're going to absolutely love it, right? So that is built into my value. With my first class experience, we include everything. Everything is included. I'm talking custom color, I'm talking the hair, I'm talking all the things. We give them photos. So I take actual photos. I give them a bag of all the products that they could use or need to be able to take care of that piece. And I've talked about this a little before, but I don't want that client to have any excuse not to take care of it the way that my home care sheet says, right? So I send that home with them. I also provide lunch for my guests when they're in for their new installs because they're in with me for a really long time. So that's really important. So, as part of my value, I share that in my consultation. I share that in everything because I think it's really important for your guests to know that, right? So, if they don't know what you offer, they're not going to pay. So you have to really spell that out for them and show them the value that you have. Like, what do most stylists offer versus what you offer instead? So, for instance, a lot of other stylists, and this is kind of I don't know, normal in our industry for the hair to be one cost and color to be another cost and styling, it's almost like an a la carte kind of deal, right? Well, think about it like this. If you were to go to a luxury hotel, okay, say you're going to the Westin, right? And you get there and they start talking about, okay, your room is X amount a night. The taxes are this much. To use the pool is going to be an extra this. To do this, it's going to be that. If you want more towels in your room, that's going to be an extra $10. Like da, 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 da. When you start rattling off pricing for here and there and this and that, in your head, what happens? You immediately think, oh, they're nickel and diming me, and it doesn't feel like a luxury experience, right? Now, all of those things could calculate out to be the exact price. But if when you go, they're like, hey, for your whole stay, it's going to be 1200. Okay, got it. Yeah, it's a really nice hotel. Versus if they're like, yeah, well, the stay itself is going to be 600, and then there's going to be an extra three in taxes and fees. Then we have $100 here, $200 there. Da, 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 da. Yeah, the numbers come out to the same thing. But at the end of the day, one feels really luxury and one doesn't, right? So being able to give your guests like a nice packaged price where they know they're not going to have any surprises of pay extra, because that's another thing I say. The price I quote you is the price you're going to pay, period, end of sentence. Like there's not going to be any surprises at the end of this. So that is kind of leading into our next lesson of like the pricing itself needs to be really transparent. And then when you quote somebody a price, you need to lock in on that. So if you think that could potentially vary, literally quote them the high end, quote them the radically huge end, and be like, hey, I suspect we're probably going to be more along X to Y, but I want you to plan for Z because at the most, that's what we're doing. And I would much rather give you a deal on the day of than quote you low and then have you pay extra. That's going to mean a lot to your guest. Okay. So, this is just another way you can add more value and really give them a luxury experience, like without actually having to spend any money. Okay. So, also understand that your pricing is not a filter. Like, you don't necessarily, and to an extent, yeah, we want to like level out some people. This is a luxury service, but it's meant to be a filter, not a huge problem. Okay. So you also need to make sure that your pricing isn't astronomical for what you're offering and where you're at. That means if you're not in a location or a like an area where you can justify the pricing, it's not necessarily a good idea to start out that way. So, for example, if I live in a rural area, okay? So if I opened up a salon out of my home and was trying to charge $8,000 in my rural area where clients have to drive off the interstate and then back country roads for another hour before they get to my home, where I'm going to do hair in my garage, that doesn't necessarily feel like luxury, right? Versus if I am at a location that's really easy to get to, there's other things around. I'm in an area where there's other stuff. It's a great town. That's you're going to be able to charge more there, right? So same thing if you're in a high crime area or something like that. Like you have to pay attention to these things. And I'm not somebody who's like, listen, look at the pricing of everybody else around you and go off that. I do not believe in that. I want to make that very clear. However, you do also have to be able to price yourself for the market that you're in. And that's like a logical thing we have to look at, right? So understanding where your like median income is for the place where you're actually doing hair and justifying off that. Now, sometimes this means if you want to start doing luxury services and you're in a not so luxury area, maybe it's time to switch salons. Maybe it's time to look at where you're at, what you're doing, and price yourself according to the area that you want to be in, and then make that move. Sometimes this is just the change that we need, but really consider that your rent, your amenities, the things that you can actually offer are important in this entire thing. So if you're priced appropriately and people are walking away, that's okay. This isn't for everyone, okay? So luxury services aren't going to be something that like Joe Bob down the street and Mary Beth that, works at the gas station can afford, and that's okay. Like there are certain services that are, haircut services, things like that. That is something that we want to be available to everybody, but hair loss services, specialty extensions, things like that, it's not for everybody. It's a choice, and there are cheaper options. So if you want to give, lower income ideas, totally fine. Work with clip-in toppers, work with something that doesn't create maintenance. Like there are ways that you can create different pricing, like points for your guests without gypping yourself and costing yourself money. Because at the end of the day, you guys, if you're not making a profit and you're losing money on these services, what's the point? Right. So we need to make sure that our profit is like worked in, that our materials are paid for, that our time is paid for, that we can pay our rent, that all of our amenities that we're giving to our guests are really in that too. And if we don't actually show our guests what we can do with that, it's not really giving us anything. So it's really important too. So your positioning online is going to be really huge on this too. So what I mean by that is your marketing. If your marketing does not come off as super luxurious, but you're charging $8,000 for an install. Remember our trust conversation and how if trust is broken, then people feel like they're being taken advantage of? So that's going to be one of those, right? If we have low quality images on our page, if we never post, but somehow are, trying to charge exorbitant amount of money, these are going to be things that your clients like, what? And they're probably not even going to reach out to book with you. So your photos need to be able to scream elevated, effortless, expensive, and that's something you could easily partner with a local photographer. You want to like actually get into making sure that your social media looks nice, making sure your lighting is good. And I know this is kind of one of those things that is just like so much freaking work, but like it's important. And if you really want to position yourselves as a luxury stylist, it's important that you take luxury images, that you present your brand in the best way possible. So, this is the same thing as like showing up to work and you're trying to charge someone, again, we'll use our $8,000, but if we're showing up in sweatpants with, our teeth not brushed and like grungy ass looks and things like no makeup, your hair not done, you just show up looking like you just rolled out of bed and then you're trying to charge somebody $8,000. I've heard people all the time be like, "Yeah, I'm not doing my hair, I'm doing yours, and like you should trust me." But like, here's the thing, mm, no, they shouldn't. And like, I know that's going to be hard to hear for some people, but trust is because lots of things line up, right? Your client perceives trust as lots of boxes being checked, all of the or coordinating. So if you're trying to give them a really luxury experience, but you come in looking like you haven't even brushed your hair in the last 9 years, like no, don't get me wrong. You can totally have like the effortless, like Haley, my stylist, she wears like mascara. That's all the makeup she wears. That's fine. Like you don't have to wear makeup, but you do have to look done. So I tell my girls, and like, as long as you would be confident going on a date right after you leave work, that's good. Like it doesn't have to look like you're going on a red carpet event, but you should look presentable. So keep that in mind. You can be effortless and still be fancy. So we have like a 2 out of 3 kind of rule in salon. So hair, makeup, or outfit. Two of those three have to be really great. The other one can slack. So if you have a really cool outfit on and your hair is done, maybe you do really light on the makeup. If you have hair and makeup that are like on point, maybe you have like a more chill outfit. Like, but do 2 out of those 3 and you'll be fine. So that's the good, like, kind of side of that. But also, like I said, take into account your branding and your positioning online. Do you have a website? Is that something that, when people come in and they're trying to find more information about you, when they click on, the link in your bio, does it literally just take them to like, I don't know, a Google Doc? Or is it something that looks really put together? Because again, value is perceived. So if your value is not lining up to the price that is put onto it, I could quote you $300 for a room at the Motel 8 or $300 for a room at the Hilton. Which one of those are you going to feel like is like, damn, that's a really nice deal? Okay. Hilton on the beach, $300. You're going to be like, damn, that's it. But you had a super rate downtown, in the shitty part of town on the wrong side of the tracks. And I say it's $300. You're going to be like, what? I'm sorry, for why? Okay. So it's the same $300. It's not about the price, it's about the value. Okay. So you have to make sure your value is there. So if your client doesn't actually see the value, the price is always going to look like it's too much. If I just tell you, look at this hotel, it's $300. Would you be like, yeah? I mean, yeah, there's probably somebody out there that just loves a good gamble that would be like, fuck it, yeah, sure, why not? But if I don't get to see what I'm getting for that $300, I'm never going to do it, right? Your client's the exact same way. If they don't get to see behind the scenes, if they don't get to see before and afters, if they don't get to see what your experience looks like, if they don't get to see like what that is and what that looks like, and if your brand doesn't scream luxury, and there's going to be some like miscommunication there. So I will let you know that a lot of, especially when we're talking in the hair loss field of things, a lot of guests expect to pay more or already have kind of a high end in their head. So, a lot of times you're not necessarily fighting with these guests on selling them on your price. However, it does happen sometimes. So, without fail, there will always be that client that, you quote 2000 to $4,000. They see 2000 and they convince themselves that their whole thing, now, mind you, there's nothing to really like support this, or they just like had really hopeful dreams. But you get on a call with them or you have them as a consultation and they're like, oh, I was really hoping it'd be closer to 2000 and not the 4000. Okay, so there are always going to be people that try to manipulate you out of your pricing. There's always going to be like things there. So this is where it's really important for you just to stand firm. Your pricing is your pricing. You are not here to haggle. You don't go to the dentist and be like, yeah, well, I kind of didn't actually want to pay that whole thing. Like you don't get to do that. So your pricing is your pricing, period, end of story. So if someone can afford it, that's totally cool. You could offer them a clip-in thing where they don't have to do that. If that's also not on their docket, just be like, hey, I totally understand. This is definitely like a luxury experience. Here's what I could set you up with. If they're like, yeah, I'm sorry, that's still a little too much. Hey, totally understand. Maybe you have some other stylists in your salon that have lower price points. You could offer them that. And if that's just not good enough for them, then that's okay. Hey, thank you so much for your time. It seems like we're just really not fit to work together. But I do wish you the best in finding a stylist that could be a good fit for you. Period. End of statement. Mic drop. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind too. Don't let your clients manipulate your pricing. And we do have an entire like pricing worksheet to help you build your pricing structure and your all-inclusive packaging. So this is really important for making sure you get all of your amenities included, making sure you have your chair's rent paid for. So it breaks down, what is your rent if you're paying rent. Um, if you're a commissioned artist, these pricing structures aren't necessarily, something that you would necessarily put together, but it would be something that you could take to your salon owner and be like, "Hey, I want to build these pricings. Can you help me do this?" And I don't understand why any salon owner would be against that. So, they could definitely help work with you to kind of see what that should be and help give you a baseline to help build these structures around. So, I want you to kind of take a look at what's the first impression that your guest might experience with your experience. So, have a friend, have a colleague, have someone look at your page. Maybe ask a new client, hey, what was your first expression or your first experience? Words are hard. Your first experience with my salon, my booking system, just ask. It's okay. So are you walking them through the value in your consultation? That's the second thing I want you to kind of look at and take into account, do a little audit on. When you're having consultations, are you telling every guest what you offer? Are you posting that occasionally? Are you sharing that on your website? Like, is it anywhere that they could find it? Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't something you have to do all the time. Like, it gets repetitive and annoying. I understand. But at least when they're on the call with you, you should at least be able to say, like, hey, this is how we kind of set everything up. Because that moment that you tell them, like, hey, everything is included before I quote you a price, I want you to know everything that comes with this price. So that when they hear it, it's not such a pack a punch. It's like, oh, but think of all I'm getting with that. Like, I'm telling you, it'll change their mindset. So you can work that in before you actually deliver that pricing. Yes. Also, I want you to sit down and look at the packages that you currently offer and really see if all your costs and profit are worked in there. So, baseline, you should be making 20% profit on every single service. So, again, if you're a commissioned artist, sit down with your salon owner and actually like go through this, ask what each individual thing is, see if we need to adjust pricing. Sometimes, especially if you're just new to taking on luxury services or hair loss services, it's really important to make sure that they're priced accordingly and not just priced how, your normal extension things are potentially priced or how Susie down the road prices hers. Okay, this is going to be different from everybody's rent, everybody's, utility payments are going to affect this. Like it's going to be different. So, if you're part of our Successful Stylist Society, you might be listening to this as the podcast, but I will be putting our pricing worksheets as a like option in there. If you would like the full pricing work down, you should join our actual program, our education is going to be a great thing. We help you actually build the pricing out. You can use these pricings for whatever you're doing, but if you want to learn how to make them applicable for the hair loss solutions that we actually use, we can totally do that within our course. So a little bit of a shorter lesson, shorter chit chat today, but I hope you get a good little nugget out of that. And if you have any kind of pricing questions or you want to know how to up your experience a little bit more, I'd love to chat with you. So if you're listening and you want to shoot me a DM, breemorgan.hairartist on Instagram. You can shoot me a DM. We can talk about your experience and what it offers. Or if you're here within the Successful Stylist Society, post on our page and we can kind of do a little audit for you and work out how we can get that pricing up or how we can make your experience really special for your guests. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful Monday.